Okay, so you have a project through AdoptSource called Needs Assessment.
Yes.
Yeah, what does that mean? Needs. What adoptees need, or I think it should be adoptees have urges assessment. What kind of urges do we have, Amy? What kind of
Well,
urges do you have, Amy?
I don't know. A lot.
Oh my, we won't go there. So needs assessment. What is that?
Basically, when AdoptSource was first established, the paperwork was done in 97, 98 to now to 2010. Actually, we started to 98. Excuse me, 2007 to now.
You're old. We'll
I'm
excuse
going
us.
back to Korea.
Yeah, old.
But,
That's what happens with age.
I know.
Senile, I think.
And
Is that right?
wrinkles too. Lots of wrinkles.
Yes.
You have to buy lots of wrinkle cream. By the way.
Okay, talk about your urges.
My urges basically, well, the needs assessment, what's the needs assessment? Needs assessment is to actually help, instead of just going out trying to create services for adopters, wanted to actually really figure out because I've been gone from Minnesota for so long, I really wanted to find out what are the trends and what are the needs or what are the issues going on in Minnesota with the adoptee community. And I found that not only the Korean adoptee community has a lot of these issues, it's the other issues, other adoptee communities in Minnesota, such as the Latino adoptees or the Vietnamese adoptees and the Chinese adoptees and the parents and so on. So there are many, many different pockets of adoptee communities in Minnesota we don't know about. And I think there's so many of us, but we're all very silent. So with this project, I'm hoping that it will bring unity and it will bring more awareness of each other and then also to the mainstream. But then also it will help us to obtain some grants and figure out what are some of the needs and issues that are going on here in Minnesota.
So I gotta say, this sounds strangely like post-adoption services, right? Yeah. So why are you is adoption agencies should be doing post-adoption services. So why are you doing this?
Well, international adoption has taken place for over 60 years, and since then, I know several adoptee organizations have approached adoption agencies, specifically Children's Home Society, and I know a lot of the doors were closed. And
doors are closed. Can you explain
the
that?
doors were closed on the adoptee organizations as they approached.
From the Children's Home Society?
Yes. So, unfortunately, there were no services. I think adult adoptees have just naturally formed social groups, but AdoptSource did not want to form a social group. It wanted to form some kind of organization where it will provide tangible resources and services in the future, just like what I did with GOAL. GOAL was not to be formed as a social group. It was formed to provide tangible resources and services for adoptees as they return to Korea.
You know, this is totally messed up to me. So, okay, so adoption agencies, I think I've repeatedly said over and over again, I'm kind of being facetious here. I'm fully aware of the lack of post-adoption services in the state, as beyond Minnesota as well. What are your thoughts about the idea of, I've always had this idea, because a person has recently asked me, so Kevin, land a gazillion adoptees, what's the end goal? And my response was, when adoption agencies and adoptive parents, as a lobby group, when they recognize adoptees, particularly like adoptee organizations like AdoptSource, recognize them as equal partners. Mm-hmm. So what are, one way of getting to the equal partners, of course, is the idea that maybe these adoption agencies in the state should hand the reins off to adoptees. And you and I have talked about this before. Mm-hmm. How could that work?
Well, I think because AdoptSource and other adoptee organizations have approached these adoptive parent groups and adoption agencies, I think the ball is really in their court. It really is. Because we've approached them numerous times, in so many different times, in so many different stages, with so many different leaderships that they've had in the past several decades, the ball is really in their court now. We're asking them to come forward and see us as an equal partner. So we've already proposed this, and we're just asking them to be an equal partner, to see us as a professional organization, and to allow us to actually embrace the post-adoption services in the community here, and to be that main contact instead of the adoption agency. I think the adoption agency does a good job in doing the adoption piece, but when it comes to the post-adoption piece, we know that void, there's a very large void, and that is missing for several years. And so we know that it's time for that void to be gone, and for us to move forward on this. And I think who better else to do this than adoptees themselves? It's just like, one of the things is, it kind of boggles my mind, like when you have an African organization, and it's run by a board of Africans, or it's run and it's established and staffed by African people. That makes sense. However, if you have an African organization and it's run by a board of Caucasian people that knows nothing or has no affiliation to Africa or African people, and the staff is all Caucasian or other ethnicity than African, it just makes no sense. It's harder to run something like that, to actually really know what the needs and services, and to understand the actual culture and community, if you don't have the actual people that...
Right.
Yeah, and that's what I think has gone on with adoption agencies in the past. And then now the parents, I think, they've done the piece where they've done the adoption piece, but I think there's this image where parents and adoption agencies always just see us as children, and that we're never, ever going to be grown up in their eyes. And I think we need...
You're old. You're totally grown up.
I know. And we need to actually show them that, we are old, and we are professionals, and we are no longer children. I mean, it was the same thing in Korea. For years, it took me where I actually, in Korea in '98, I started educating the Korean society. They didn't have the word Korean adult adoptee. They only had the word adoptee children. So I had to tell them that you have a new word now. There's a new word called adult adoptee, 입양인. They always had 입양아, which means child. So they finally had to start referring us as adult adoptees, because they always referred us still as adoptee children. And so it's the same thing in the agencies. When I was in Korea, they said, you're growing up. We never thought you would come back. Well, it's the same thing here. The agencies and the adopted parents, they still see us as children, and so it's time to see that we're grown up.
Okay, Amy with an I. From what I understand, the current president and CEO of Children's Home Society and Family Services, an organization that you've mentioned, the current CEO and president is Maureen Warren. If you were to be face to face with her right now, and the camera was her, I mean, she's taller than the camera, but if the camera was her, what would you say to her in terms of a possible partnership between Children's Home Society and Adopt Source?
Well, I guess I would say, Ms. Warren, my message to you from Adopt Source is, we would really like for Children's Home Society, as an adoption agency, to continue to do the adoption. I think you guys do a good job with that. However, let Adopt Source take over and run the post-adoption services. Let that organization be your main resource and organization to do post-adoption services instead of Children's Home Society.
Well, what clout do you have to be able to say that, Amy?
I think with all of our experiences working with Goal, and then also working with Adopt Source in the past, and also just being an adoptee myself, and having a board of adult adoptees, and also we have some adopted parents, and then also our committees run by adult adoptees. I think we have a huge club. We know what we need. We feel like we can connect to other adoptees and families much more effectively than I think in adoption agencies that are non-adoptees.
Say, that's the good stuff.
That's the good stuff. clogging his own brakes. So stay put, do whatever it takes. Time is pressing on the gas pedal. You better run with the season, cause the coyotes are feeding. Coyotes looking hungry.